Listening to the Falkland Island Broadcasting Station. The time's 8:15, and this is Charlie Lowndes welcoming you to the Christmas Eve edition of the Falklands News Desk. In tonight's programme, a Christmas message from Sir Rex and Lady Hunt. Cranley Onslow sets out British government policy on the Shackleton report. We've two more written replies to Ledgeco. News of a free-fall parachute display which will be taking place over Stanley on Sunday. And a special offer of a print of HMS Endurance. A reminder about the fun run on New Year's Day, and a visit to the mooring site for the Coastal, the Safe Dominia, between now and 9 o'clock. First of all, though, this evening, a message from His Excellency the Civil Commissioner, Sir Rex Hunt, and Lady Hunt. Patrick Watts went along to Government House and began by asking Sir Rex for his feelings at Christmas 1982, considering the dramatic year it's been for the Falklands.
My feelings at this Christmas time are a mixture of thankfulness and optimism. Thankfulness for the past and optimism for the future. I thank God that I'm alive. I thank Mrs. Thatcher and the task force for the fact that I'm back here in Government House. I thank Lord Shackleton for his report and the British government for their response to it, which, no matter what some critics may say, has been very generous. I thank Baroness Vickers for her nationality bill, and again, the British government for not opposing it. My optimism for the future stems from what I've just said. With the secure defences that General Thorne and his men have given us, and the funds that the British government have now pledged, we can go ahead with the economic development of these islands and improve the standard of living for all. Of course, we'll still have our troubles. This is not a fairy tale world we live in. But they are much more manageable now than they were this time last year. The most important is, of course, our security. I've heard some of you worriedly prophesying that the Arges will be back, to which I asked a simple question: how? There is no chance of their coming again with a surface fleet. Their ships would be sunk before they were even in sight of these shores. So how else? They couldn't invade by air or by submarine. They could conceivably make nuisance raids, but that would be a terrific gamble for them to take, both militarily and politically. With the defences we now have, their losses would assuredly be very heavy indeed, and at a level that they couldn't possibly sustain. Politically, they would think twice before losing more friends in the world. The junta may not take any notice of their own people in Argentina, but they do take notice of world opinion. And thanks to Galtieri's folly and the Trojan efforts of some of our councillors, we have a lot more world opinion on our side now than we had this time last year. So I say, away with all the Jeremiahs and the doubting Thomases. We have marvellous opportunities ahead of us, as long as we have faith in ourselves and confidence in the future. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy and peaceful New Year.
Thank you, Sir Rex. Lady Hunt, I'm glad that you could be with us at the moment of this recording. I wonder if you would like to say a few words at this particular time, please.
I'd just like to say how happy I am to be back in the islands, and how much I'm looking forward to seeing our old friends in North Arm after Christmas, and also getting out to see you all again in camp sometime in the new year. I join my husband in wishing you all a very Merry Christmas and best wishes for 1983.
Lady Hunt, thank you very much.
Well, now some extracts from the speech made by the Minister of State for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Cranley Onslow, opening the debate on the Shackleton report about the Falkland Islands in the House of Commons on the 22nd of December, 2 days ago. Mr. Onslow, first of all, summed up the arrangements that have been made by the Shackleton report to spend upwards of £31 million on the Falkland Islands, and paid tribute to the islanders and the forces for their work to rehabilitate the islands after the Argentine occupation, and went on to say this: 2 weeks ago, my Right Honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, that's Mr. Pym, announced our intention, the government's intention, to provide a further £5 million sterling over the next 2 or 3 financial years to enable the Falkland Islands government to tackle a number of longer-term rehabilitation tasks, essentially involving the more permanent reconditioning of essential services, and in particular the roads in Stanley, which have suffered both during the conflict and from the enormously increased traffic since the liberation, the water supply, the power system, and the internal telecommunication system. We have concluded that major remedial work on the roads in Stanley and the road to the airport must be tackled before the onset of the next winter, and we're taking urgent action to engage a United Kingdom contractor for these works. Later on, he talked about the matter of air links with the mainland of Latin America. Mr. Onslow said that as the Under-Secretary of State for Defence Procurement confirmed in the House on the 21st, we fully accept the need to provide a better airfield on the islands. Studies are in progress, as we know, aimed at identifying the best site and the likely cost. The Ministry of Defence is taking the lead on this, but the government will be taking full account of civil as well as military needs. I would add, however, said Mr. Onslow, that the question of air links with the mainland must be seen in the correct perspective. They are highly desirable, but with due respect to Lord Shackleton, they're not absolutely crucial for our plans for the future development of the islands. The established way of moving goods to and from the Falklands has always been by sea. Indeed, Port Stanley now enjoys a much more frequent shipping service than before the conflict. This will continue for the moment to be the channel for normal supplies, for materials, for rehabilitation and development, and the means of access by families and by routine travellers. It will, of course, still be helpful to establish sea and air links with the mainland at an early stage, and we're continuing to pursue the possibilities. In due course, I believe we shall see such links develop. Meanwhile, said Mr. Onslow, the RAF air bridge is an effective means of meeting the needs of essential passengers. Later he talked about the setting up of the Falkland Islands Development Agency and said that the function of it would be to manage revenue-earning projects within the new development programme and to provide grants and loans for suitable projects. It will also have powers to buy and sell land. He said that the agency would have a budget for small development projects and would be responsible for work on expanding tourism, including the upgrading of existing tourist accommodation. And Mr. Onslow hoped that it would be able to manage the proposed programme of grants and subsidies for agriculture, and also handle negotiations with commercial interests who may wish to invest in the islands. There may be some scope, he said, for joint venture activity. On the question of the reform of land ownership, Mr. Onslow said that there is evidence that many farm employees are apprehensive about the prospect of wholesale subdivision of land ownership. It would drastically reduce, he said, the scope for the employment of wage earners in farming. Moreover, many of the present farm managers and employees also fear that subdivision would ruin the social benefits of the present pattern of settlement. It must also be recognised that some, and I stress some, said Mr. Onslow, of the absentee-owned farms, those of the Falkland Islands Company, for example, are among the most efficient and productive on the islands. Against that background, he continued, we, the government, have concluded that we should approach the issue by enabling the Falkland Islands government to purchase land that may become available on the open market. The new development agency will be empowered to carry out that work, but if a suitable property becomes available before the agency is set up, and if we can agree on an acceptable price, it will of course be possible to go ahead forthwith. Well, later on in his speech to the Commons, Mr. Onslow said this, Lord Shackleton's team considered some aspects of the island's infrastructure which are in need of urgent attention. I shall deal first with port facilities. Those who visited the islands will know that only one of the Port Stanley jetties is even adequately serviceable. There's clearly a requirement for a new multi-purpose jetty. The precise location and design needs to be based on a professional survey, and we're ready to engage consultants for this. I hope that they'll be able to undertake the fieldwork within the first 3 months of next year, 1983. Their studies can embrace the wider prospects for improving harbour facilities, so that blueprints will exist should further commercial development seem justified. In the shorter term, I'm confident, said Mr. Onslow, that it will prove possible to proceed with a new jetty, and I hope that the construction phase can commence in the summer 1983-84. That's in a year's time. We've estimated that this might cost up to £7 million sterling. The Shackleton team, he added, have also envisaged work on an improved road network. I've spoken earlier about remedial work around Stanley. Beyond that, we expect the island's Public Works Department to continue work on the partially constructed road from Stanley to Darwin. In the light of progress, we'll be prepared to consider engaging a contractor to complete it. Otherwise, he said, we are not convinced that the case for a much more elaborate road network is yet made. There seems little prospect of enough traffic to justify the investment, while the maintenance costs would be a heavy burden on the Falkland Islands government. I'm sure that some honourable members have seen for themselves, said Mr. Onslow, the state to which the existing stretch of the Darwin-Stanley Road has been reduced by the severe traffic on it. Before there is any commitment to expenditure on additional roads, there needs to be more work on the other possibilities for communications between the main settlements by sea, and in particular by air. Well, as he neared the end of his speech, Mr. Onslow mentioned possible settlers here. All the applicants, he said, have been asked to complete a detailed questionnaire, and nearly 300 of these have so far been returned. The Falkland Islands government are responsible for immigration into the islands, and they hope to establish an office in London early next year, and this will have as a first priority the task of identifying suitable settlers from among the many who've applied. Well, his conclusion was, money is not all. The success of our plans depends above all on the commitment of the islanders themselves, in their government and at large, in Port Stanley and in the camp, to join in building a secure future for themselves and their children. I need hardly remind the House, said Mr. Onslow, what resolve the islanders have shown in the past. There may be occasional disagreements about priorities, or differences of opinion about individual ideas in the years ahead, but I believe that we are all agreed about the aim we share, even if there is much hard work still to be done. I am confident that together we can achieve it. Well, that was Cranley Onslow's views, the junior Foreign Office Minister. Now we have a couple of written replies to questions in the Legislative Council here in the Falkland Islands. There was a question by the Honourable J.E. Cheek asking, in compiling the Stanley Cost of Living Index, has the frequent lack of local meat and consequent reliance on expensive imported meats been taken into account? Presuming it has, what increase in the cost of living bonus has this caused? The written reply by the Financial Secretary reads, no, sir. The lack of local meat from the butchery has not been taken into account in the index of retail prices. The index is only compiled quarterly, and at this stage it would be inappropriate for the Cost of Living Committee to take this into account. If the lack of local meat continues permanently, then some substitute will need to be considered. The Cost of Living Committee will keep the position under review. And a question from the Honourable A.T. Blake. Has the government sufficient funds, he asked, to purchase the farm known as Pack Brothers? A reply by the Honourable the Financial Secretary read, no, sir, it's considered that the Falkland Islands government does not have funds to purchase the farm known as Pack Brothers. The present level of reserves is below an acceptable minimum, and current expenditure budgeted is considered to have priority over purchasing Pack Brothers.